I waited 25 years to get my revenge, and it was more than worth it. My stepdad, Rick, moved into our house when I was just 8 years old. Mom was head over heels for him, and honestly, so was I at first. He brought me cool gifts, took me fishing, and even helped me with my science fair projects. But at home, when Mom wasn't around, he was different. If I left a toy on the floor or forgot to take out the trash, he'd get this look in his eyes. "Your mom doesn't need to know how you really behave, does she?" he'd say, squeezing my shoulder just a little too hard. By the time I was 12, the mask had completely slipped. He'd accidentally break my things when Mom was working late shifts at the hospital. Once he threw my baseball signed by Derek Jeter right into our fireplace because I didn't mow the lawn exactly how he wanted. "Tell your mom, and I'll make sure she knows what a disappointment you really are," he'd whisper. When I tried telling Mom anyway, Rick had already planted seeds. "Poor kid has quite an imagination," he'd say with that perfect smile. "Remember how he made up that story about seeing a wolf in the backyard last month?" I learned to keep quiet. I kept a hidden journal of everything he did, tucked inside a hollow science textbook on my shelf. On my 18th birthday, I got accepted to a college across the country. Rick seemed thrilled to finally get rid of me. As I packed my things, he leaned against my doorframe. "Don't bother coming back for holidays," he smirked. "Your mom and I could use the alone time." That night, I heard them arguing downstairs. Mom was upset I was going so far away. "He's running from something," she said. "I just don't understand why he won't talk to me anymore." Rick's voice was soft, convincing. "Some boys just need space from their mothers. It's normal. Trust me." I left for college the next day with my secret journal tucked in my bag. 4 years later, Mom called me in tears. Rick had cleaned out their bank accounts. Every penny of her retirement savings gone. He'd been gambling for years, she said. She felt so stupid for not seeing it. I wanted to tell her everything then, but what good would it do? She was already broken. Instead, I moved back home to help her rebuild. Every few years, we'd hear rumors about Rick. He'd remarried a wealthy widow in Florida. Then, he was running a boat tour business in the Caribbean. Mom eventually found happiness with a kind man who actually deserved her. Meanwhile, I built a successful life, got married, had kids, started an accounting firm, but I never forgot about Rick. I used my professional skills to keep tabs on him over the years, just little checks, nothing illegal. I tracked his moves from one scam to another across 3 states. Then, after 25 years, I saw my chance. Rick had wormed his way into becoming the treasurer of a charity foundation in Arizona. According to their financial filings, large sums were being moved around in suspicious patterns. I didn't want innocent people to suffer, so I set up an anonymous email account and sent detailed documentation of Rick's past frauds to the foundation's board members along with instructions on what to look for in their accounts. 3 weeks later, it hit the local news. Rick was arrested for embezzling over $200,000 from a children's cancer charity. His newest wife was interviewed, crying about how she had no idea who he really was. I watched his perp walk on YouTube. Same smug face, now older and panicked as reporters shouted questions. I noticed he still had that nervous habit of adjusting his collar when he lied. Mom called me that evening. "Did you see the news about Rick?" she asked quietly. "Yeah, I did," I replied, trying to keep my voice neutral. There was a long pause. "You know," she finally said, "I found your old journal in the attic about 10 years ago when I was packing to move." My heart stopped. She paused, and her voice dropped to barely a whisper. "I found your journal, and I also found Rick's. He kept one too, documenting every manipulation, every lie he told me about you." My chest tightened. He wrote about how he was grooming you for something bigger, teaching you to lie, to hide things, to keep secrets. She looked at me with something like fear. The FBI agent who contacted me about Rick's arrest asked me a strange question. "Did I know you'd been transferring money to Rick's accounts for the past 3 years? Because their records show you have been." I literally couldn't breathe for a second. My hand gripped the phone so tight I thought it might crack. "What?" I managed to say. "Mom, that's insane. I haven't given Rick a single penny. Not ever." "That's what I told them," she said, and I could hear her crying now. "But they showed me, honey. Bank records with your name, your account number, wire transfers going to different accounts Rick controlled. Over $50,000. I sat down hard on my office chair, my mind racing. This didn't make any sense. "Mom, I swear to you, I have no idea what you're talking about. I need to see these records. The FBI agent said they'd be contacting you directly," she whispered. "Are you in some kind of trouble? Did he somehow get you involved in this?" "No," I said firmly, though panic was starting to set in. "Listen to me. I had nothing to do with Rick's embezzlement. Someone's using my identity. It has to be. This is exactly the kind of thing Rick would do." We talked for another 20 minutes, with Mom crying and apologizing for even questioning me, but I could tell she was scared. Hell, I was scared too. When we hung up, I just sat there staring at my computer screen, trying to process what had just happened. The FBI called 2 days later. Agent Williams and Agent Park wanted to meet with me to discuss some financial transactions. I told them I wouldn't say anything without a lawyer present, which I'm pretty sure made me look guilty as hell, but I wasn't stupid. I called my buddy Tyler from college, who'd become a criminal defense attorney. "Dude, you're not gonna believe this," I said when he picked up. "Remember my psycho stepdad I told you about back in freshman year? The one who threw your baseball in the fireplace?" Tyler asked. "Yeah, that one. Well, he just got arrested for embezzling from a charity, and now the FBI thinks I was helping him launder money." There was silence on the other end. Then Tyler said, "Okay, don't talk to anyone else. I'm calling a colleague of mine who specializes in financial fraud. His name's Jeff Kowalski. You're gonna need someone who knows this stuff inside and out." Jeff turned out to be this no-nonsense guy in his 50s who'd been handling white-collar crime cases for like 20 years. When I met him at his office downtown, he didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Tell me everything," he said, pulling out a legal pad. "And I mean everything, starting from when Rick entered your life." So I did. I told him about the abuse, the manipulation, the journal I'd kept, how Rick had destroyed Mom's finances and disappeared. I told him about tracking Rick over the years and sending the anonymous tip to the charity foundation. Jeff listened without interrupting, taking notes. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Here's the thing you need to understand," he said. "The FBI doesn't care about your history with this guy. They don't care that he was abusive when you were a kid. All they care about is following the money, and right now, the money trail leads to you." "But I didn't do anything," I said. "I believe you," Jeff replied. "But belief isn't evidence. We need to prove someone stole your identity and set up these accounts. That means getting every piece of financial documentation you have going back at least 5 years. Over the next week, Jeff subpoenaed my bank records. I gave him access to everything, my checking accounts, savings, credit cards, investment accounts, all of it. I was clean. I knew I was clean, but the waiting was torture. My wife Amy tried to stay supportive, but I could see the worry in her eyes. "What if they don't believe you?" she asked, one night after the kids were in bed. "They have to," I said, though I wasn't sure I believed it myself. "The truth is the truth. Since when has that mattered?" Amy said quietly, and I didn't have an answer for that. Jeff called me into his office about a week later. He had this grim look on his face that made my stomach drop. "Okay, so here's what we found," he said, spreading documents across his desk. "Someone opened a secondary savings account in your name at a different branch of your bank 3 years ago." I leaned forward, staring at the papers. "How is that possible? I would have gotten notifications, statements, something. They used a different address," Jeff explained. "A PO box in Arizona, actually. And get this, they had your real social security number and what appears to be a legitimate driver's license with your name, but Rick's photo with some digital alterations." "What the hell?" I grabbed the account opening documents. The signature looked like mine, but wasn't quite right. "So Rick made a fake ID using my information?" "That's what it looks like," Jeff said. "And this account? It was basically a pass-through for the embezzled money. Charity funds would come in, stay for maybe a day or two, then get wired out to offshore accounts. It's a classic laundering setup, and you were the patsy." I felt sick. He planned this. He knew he'd get caught eventually, so he set me up to take the fall with him. Or at least muddy the waters, Jeff agreed. "The question is, how did he get your personal information?" I thought about it, going through the limited times I'd been back to Mom's house over the years. "Mom kept some of my stuff in my old bedroom," I said slowly. "Birth certificate, old tax returns, that kind of thing. I told her to throw it out. But you know how moms are. She wanted to keep my childhood room intact or whatever. And Rick would have had access to all of it," Jeff finished. "Okay, this is good. This is something we can work with." He set up a meeting with the FBI agents for the following week. In the meantime, I was a complete mess. I couldn't focus at work. One of my biggest clients asked if everything was okay because I'd made errors on their quarterly report, something I never did. "Just some personal stuff," I told them. But word was getting around. I could feel it. People looking at me differently in meetings, conversations stopping when I walked by. Then the emails started. Anonymous tips sent to my clients suggesting I was under federal investigation for fraud. My business partners got them too. "Is this true?" One of them asked me directly. "Because if you're caught up in something illegal, we need to know." "It's not true," I said. "Someone's trying to destroy my reputation. I'm being set up." But I could see the doubt in their eyes. Who sends anonymous emails about someone unless there's some truth to it? The FBI meeting was tense as hell. Jeff, me, and 2 stone-faced federal agents in a conference room that smelled like old coffee. Agent Williams, this older guy with gray hair, laid out the evidence against me. Bank statements, wire transfer records, account opening documents. "Mr. Harrison," he said, Can you explain why your name and social security number are attached to these transactions? Because someone stole my identity, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I've never opened an account at that branch. I've never wired money to any of these accounts. I didn't even know this was happening until my mom called me. Agent Park, the younger one, raised an eyebrow. You expect us to believe Rick Donovan went through all this trouble to frame you? Jeff cut in before I could respond. Actually, that's exactly what we're saying, and we have evidence to support it. He slid over the documents we'd prepared. This account was opened at a branch near Rick's residence in Arizona, not anywhere near where my client lives. The IP addresses for all online transfers trace back to Arizona, and if you look at the signature on the account opening forms, a handwriting analyst will tell you it's a forgery. The agents looked through the documents, their expressions unreadable. We'll need to verify all of this, Williams finally said. Please do, Jeff replied. My client is a victim here, not a perpetrator. Rick Donovan has a documented history of fraud and manipulation. This is just his latest scam. After the meeting, Jeff seemed cautiously optimistic. They're not going to drop this immediately, he told me. But we planted enough doubt. They'll investigate further, and when they do, they'll see you're telling the truth. But the damage to my reputation was already done. That competitor who'd sent the anonymous emails, they were poaching my clients left and right. We just can't take the risk, one of them told me apologetically. If this turns out to be true, it's not true, I said for what felt like the 100th time. But they'd already made up their minds. Amy and I had to sit down with our kids, age 13 and 10, and explain that people might say mean things about Daddy, but none of it was real. Our daughter asked, "Did you do something bad?" "No, sweetie," I said, pulling her into a hug. Sometimes bad people tell lies about good people, and that's what's happening now. But at school, kids were already talking. Our son came home with a bloody nose after getting into a fight with another kid who'd called me a thief. I told him to shut up, our son said, tears streaming down his face. I told him you didn't do it. Amy cried that night after the kids were asleep. I can't watch them go through this, she said. They don't deserve this. I know, I whispered, holding her. I'm going to fix it. I promise. A week later, Jeff called with news. Remember how I mentioned Rick hired a private investigator to dig into your finances? Well, I did some digging of my own. Turns out Rick hired this guy about 6 years ago, long before the charity embezzlement started. 6 years? I said. Why would he be investigating me 6 years ago? That's the question, Jeff said. I'm thinking he was planning this for a long time, setting up his escape plan, his fall guy. That's you. Then things took an unexpected turn. I was at my office when the receptionist called. There's a woman here to see you. She says it's about Rick Donovan. I went to the lobby and found a blonde woman in her 40s, dressed in expensive clothes but looking like she hadn't slept in days. You're Jake Harrison? She asked. Yeah, I said cautiously. And you are? Denise Donovan, Rick's wife. She laughed bitterly. Or I guess soon-to-be ex-wife. Can we talk somewhere private? We went to a coffee shop down the street. Denise ordered a black coffee and didn't touch it. I saw the news about you being investigated, she said. And I know you didn't do it. How do you know that? I asked. She pulled out her phone and showed me photos of documents. Because I found these in Rick's home office. He has a whole folder labeled with your name. Financial records, social media screenshots, information about your business, your family. It's like he was stalking you. My blood ran cold looking at the photos. There were pictures of my house, my kids' school, my office. When did you find this? I asked. Last week, she said. After he got arrested, I started going through his things, trying to understand who I actually married. And I found all this stuff about you. She leaned forward. He talked about you sometimes, you know, your mom's son. He'd get this weird look in his eyes when your name came up. I asked him once if you two got along, and he said you'd ruined his life. I was 8 when he met me, I said. He ruined my childhood. I believe you, Denise said quietly. And I want to help. I'm filing for divorce. And honestly, I just want him to pay for everything he's done. To me, to you, to all those kids whose charity money he stole. What kind of help are you offering? I asked. She smiled. The FBI hasn't seized everything yet. I made copies of Rick's personal laptop before they came for it, and it has some very interesting emails on it. I immediately called Jeff, and we met with Denise and her attorney the next day. The laptop was a goldmine. Rick had been in contact with someone on the dark web who specialized in creating fake identities. Emails discussing how much it would cost to make a convincing fake driver's license, how to forge signatures, how to open accounts without triggering fraud alerts. This is it, Jeff said, scrolling through the emails. This is exactly what we need. But it got even better. Rick had kept notes, encrypted files that Denise's tech guy had managed to crack. And in those notes, Rick had basically confessed everything. He wrote about how I'd destroyed his life by exposing his frauds over the years, how I'd turned my mom against him, how I deserved to suffer the way he'd suffered. The guy kept a manifesto, Jeff said in disbelief. He actually documented his plan to frame you. There were details about tracking my life through social media, finding out where I lived, what bank I used. He'd even noted the best time to open the fake account, when there'd be a new employee at the branch who wouldn't look too closely at the ID. Jeff presented everything to the FBI, and I could see the shift in their attitudes immediately. This changes things, Agent Williams admitted. We'll need to verify the authenticity of these files, but if they check out, they'll check out, Jeff assured him. Agent Park actually apologized. We have to follow the evidence wherever it leads, she said. Sometimes that means investigating innocent people. I'm sorry for what you've been through. The FBI shifted their entire focus to building an airtight case against Rick. The identity theft charges were added to the embezzlement, wire fraud, everything. They estimated he was looking at serious prison time, like 15 to 20 years if convicted. But Rick's lawyer had other plans. A few days later, Jeff got a call with a plea deal offer. Rick's willing to confess to the identity theft and everything else, Jeff told me. But only if you agree to write a letter supporting leniency because of his difficult childhood. I actually laughed. You're joking. I wish I was, Jeff said. His attorney claims Rick had a rough upbringing, abuse issues, and that contributed to his behavior. They want you to acknowledge that in a letter to the judge. Absolutely not, I said. Rick can rot. I'm not helping him get a lighter sentence after what he did to me, to my mom, to those kids whose charity money he stole. That's what I figured you'd say, Jeff replied. I'll let them know. Rick's lawyer tried to pressure us, calling multiple times over the next week. Your client is being vindictive, he told Jeff. Mr. Harrison's letter could make a real difference in the sentencing. My client is being reasonable, Jeff countered. Rick Donovan framed him for federal crimes. Why would he show mercy? In the meantime, I got another unexpected phone call. It was my mom. Can we meet for coffee? She asked. There's something I need to tell you. We met at this little cafe near her house. Mom looked older than I remembered, more fragile. She ordered tea and spent a long time stirring in honey before she finally spoke. I need to apologize, she said, for everything, for not protecting you from Rick, for not believing you when you tried to tell me what he was doing. Mom, I started, but she held up her hand. Let me finish, she said. I found your journal about 10 years ago, like I told you, but there's more. I also found Rick's journal, the one the FBI mentioned. He kept detailed records of how he manipulated me, how he was slowly isolating you, how he planned to use you as a scapegoat if any of his schemes ever came to light. I felt my chest tighten. You knew all that and never said anything? I was afraid, she admitted, tears streaming down her face. Afraid of what he might do if I confronted him. Afraid of losing everything again. Afraid of admitting I'd chosen him over you. She looked at me with so much pain in her eyes. I saw the warning signs when you were young, the way you'd flinch when he raised his voice, how quiet you got around him, how desperate you were to go to college as far away as possible. And I ignored all of it because I was lonely and scared of being alone. We talked for hours that day. Really talked for the first time in decades. Mom apologized for everything she should have done differently, and I told her about the years I'd spent angry at her, feeling abandoned and unprotected. It wasn't a magical healing moment or anything, but it was a start. A few weeks later, the FBI officially cleared me. I got a formal letter stating I was a victim of identity theft and financial fraud, not a suspect in Rick's embezzlement case. Jeff framed it and gave it to me. For your office wall, he said. So everyone knows. I sent copies to every single client, along with a detailed explanation of what had happened. Most of them came back, apologizing for doubting me. The competitor who'd spread the rumors, my lawyer sent them a cease and desist letter threatening a major defamation lawsuit unless they issued public corrections and compensated me for lost business. They settled within a week. Apparently, they didn't want Discovery to reveal just how deliberately they'd tried to destroy my reputation. My business slowly recovered. It wasn't immediate, and there were still people who whispered about it, but the work started coming back. My partners apologized for doubting me. We should have stood by you, one of them said. We let fear make our decisions. Yeah, you did, I said. But I get it. This whole thing was designed to make me look guilty. Rick's trial date was finally set for that fall. His attorney advised him to take the plea deal, to plead guilty to all charges in exchange for a recommended sentence of 12 years. Going to trial with this much evidence against you is suicide, his lawyer apparently told him. They have everything. The emails, the fake ID documentation, your own notes confessing to the scheme. A jury will bury you. But Rick, being Rick, refused. According to Denise, who I'd stayed in touch with throughout this whole mess, Rick was convinced he could charm a jury the way he'd charmed people his entire life. He thought he could spin a story, make himself the victim, get off with minimal time. He actually believes his own lies, Denise told me over the phone. It's scary how delusional he is. The prosecutor reached out a month before the trial. We'd like you to testify, she said. Not just about the identity theft, but about Rick's pattern of behavior going back to your childhood. It establishes a clear history of manipulation and deception. I agreed immediately. Jeff and I spent weeks preparing. We went through my old journal entries, organized documentation of Rick's abuse and manipulation tactics spanning decades. The prosecutor, this sharp woman named Angela Chen, was thorough as hell. The defense is going to try to paint you as someone with a vendetta, she warned me. They'll say you're biased, that you've been obsessed with revenge for years. You need to stay calm and stick to the facts. I can do that, I said. The trial started on a Tuesday in September. The courthouse was packed with reporters because the case had gotten a lot of media attention. Local treasurer steals from children's cancer charity and frames his stepson. It was the kind of story that wrote itself. Rick showed up in a nice suit, looking like a respectable businessman. He smiled at the jury, nodded politely at the judge, played the part perfectly. Watching him made my skin crawl because I remembered that smile from childhood. Right before he'd break something of mine, or whisper threats when Mom wasn't looking. The first few days of trial focused on the financial evidence. The prosecutor brought in forensic accountants who walked the jury through every dollar Rick had stolen. Fake vendor payments, inflated expense reports, money that should have gone to helping kids with cancer instead going into offshore accounts. Over 18 months, the defendant systematically embezzled $243,000, one accountant testified. He was very careful, never taking too much at once, always having plausible explanations ready. Then came the identity theft evidence. An FBI forensic expert testified about the fake driver's license, the forged signatures, the account opened in my name. They showed the jury the emails between Rick and the dark web identity specialist, complete with price negotiations and instructions for creating the fake ID. The prosecutor even had the bank employee who'd opened the account testify. I remember this transaction, the young woman said. The man showed me a driver's license with this name and seemed like a regular customer. I had no reason to suspect it was fraudulent. Can you identify the man who opened the account? The prosecutor asked. The bank employee pointed at Rick. That's him, I'm certain. Rick's attorney tried to poke holes in her testimony during cross-examination, suggesting she might be mistaken, that it had been 3 years after all. But she held firm. I remember him clearly, she said. He made a joke about the photo on his license looking nothing like him. He said he'd lost weight since it was taken. Now I know why the photo didn't match. Then it was my turn to testify. I took the stand on day 4 of the trial, my hand shaking slightly as I was sworn in. The prosecutor started with easy questions. My name, age, occupation, relationship to Rick. Can you describe what your relationship with Mr. Donovan was like when you were growing up? She asked. I looked at Rick, sitting at the defense table with that same fake neutral expression he'd perfected decades ago. Then I looked at the jury and told them everything. I told them about the gifts at first, the fishing trips, how he seemed like a good guy. Then I described how things changed when Mom wasn't around. The threats, the broken belongings, the manipulation. I told them about the baseball he threw in the fireplace, about the journal I kept hidden because I was terrified of him. Did you ever tell your mother what was happening? The prosecutor asked. I tried, I said. But Rick had already planted seeds. He'd tell Mom I had an active imagination, that I made up stories. She believed him over me because she loved him and wanted to believe the best in him. I told them about leaving for college, about how Rick seemed thrilled to get rid of me, about the years that followed, his gambling away Mom's savings, his disappearances and reappearances with new wives and new scams. Did you track Mr. Donovan's activities over the years? The prosecutor asked. Yes, I admitted. I'm an accountant. I kept tabs on him through public records, just checking in every now and then. When I saw he was treasurer of a charity, I looked at their financial filings and noticed suspicious patterns. I sent an anonymous tip to the foundation's board because I didn't want innocent people to get hurt. And when did you become aware that Mr. Donovan had opened a bank account in your name? When my mother called to tell me the FBI had shown her wire transfer records with my information on them, I said. I had no idea until that moment. I'd never authorized any of those transactions, never opened that account. Rick stole my identity to set me up as his fall guy. The prosecutor showed the jury my childhood journal, carefully preserved all these years. Can you explain what this is? She asked. It's a record of everything Rick did to me, I said. I started keeping it when I was 12 because I knew someday I'd need proof. I wrote down every threat, every broken item, every time he manipulated my mom against me. The defense attorney objected. arguing that decades-old journal entries from a child weren't reliable evidence, but the judge allowed it to establish pattern and motive. Then came cross-examination. Rick's attorney, this older guy in an expensive suit, tried to make me look like I had a vendetta. "Mr. Harrison, isn't it true that you've harbored resentment against my client for over 25 years?" he asked. "I've harbored accurate memories of his abuse for 25 years, I corrected. "There's a difference. You sent that anonymous tip to the charity foundation that led to his arrest, didn't you? I sent information about suspicious financial activity to the people who had a right to know about it," I said. "I didn't make up those transactions. Rick did them himself, but you wanted to see him arrested, didn't you? You wanted revenge for the childhood you claim he ruined. I wanted justice," I said calmly, "and I wanted to prevent him from hurting more people the way he hurt my family. If that's revenge to you, then sure, call it that." The attorney tried to rattle me, suggesting I was obsessed with Rick, that I'd somehow orchestrated this whole thing to frame him. But I stayed composed, just like Angela had coached me to do. "Mr. Harrison," the attorney said, getting frustrated, "my client maintains that you actually approached him 3 years ago with a proposal to help you evade taxes, and that this whole identity theft claim is you trying to cover your own crimes." I actually smiled at that. "Your client is a liar," I said simply. "He's been lying his entire life. He lied to my mother, he lied to his other wives, he lied to the charity, and he's lying now. The evidence doesn't support his story, it supports mine." After I stepped down, the prosecutor called more witnesses. The private investigator Rick had hired 6 years ago testified about being asked to dig into my financial information. He wanted everything. The investigator said, bank accounts, credit history, employment records. He said it was for a custody case, but that never made sense because they didn't have kids together. Then Rick's attorney made what turned out to be a huge mistake. He called Rick to the stand to tell his side of the story. Rick was smooth at first, explaining how he'd been a good stepfather, how I was a difficult child who never accepted him, how the charity embezzlement was a misunderstanding, accounting errors, not theft. "And what about the account opened in Jake Harrison's name?" the prosecutor asked during cross-examination. Rick barely hesitated. "Jake approached me about 3 years ago," he said. "He had some tax issues with his accounting firm and wanted my help setting up offshore accounts to hide assets. I told him it was illegal, but he was insistent. When things went wrong, he tried to blame everything on me." The prosecutor smiled. "So you're saying Jake Harrison, a successful accountant with no history of legal troubles, suddenly decided to commit tax fraud and asked you, his estranged stepfather who he hadn't spoken to in years, for help?" "Yes," Rick said confidently. "And you just happened to have the skills and connections to create fake IDs and open fraudulent bank accounts?" "I never said I created fake IDs," Rick backtracked. "Jake must have done that himself." The prosecutor pulled out the laptop evidence. "Then can you explain these emails from your personal computer, where you're clearly discussing purchasing fake identification documents from a dark web vendor?" Rick's face went red. "Those could have been planted." "By who?" "Your wife, who's divorcing you and cooperating with our investigation." "By Jake," Rick said, his voice rising. "He's been trying to destroy me for years." The prosecutor showed the jury the encrypted notes, Rick's own words describing his plan to frame me. "Did Jake plant these too?" she asked. "These notes written in your handwriting, on your computer, describing how you plan to get revenge on him for ruining your marriage to his mother?" Rick started to lose it. "You don't understand," he said. "That kid destroyed my life. I gave his mother everything, and he turned her against me with his lies. He made sure I lost my family, my money, my reputation. I was just trying to show him what it felt like to lose everything you've built." The courtroom went silent. Rick's attorney looked like he wanted to disappear. The prosecutor just nodded slowly. "So you admit that you deliberately stole Jake Harrison's identity to frame him for crimes you committed?" she asked. Rick realized his mistake too late. "No, that's not what I meant. You just testified that you wanted to show Jake what it felt like to lose everything. You wanted revenge, and the way you chose to get that revenge was by framing him for federal crimes. Isn't that correct?" Rick's attorney objected, but the damage was done. Rick had basically confessed on the stand. After that, Rick completely fell apart. He started ranting about how everyone had betrayed him. Me for being a difficult stepchild, Mom for choosing me over him, Denise for cooperating with the investigation, the charity board for not appreciating his work. He blamed everyone except himself. The judge finally had to tell him to step down. "Mr. Donovan, please return to your seat," she said firmly. Closing arguments happened the next day. The prosecutor laid out the overwhelming evidence, the financial records, the fake IDs, the emails, Rick's own notes, his testimony where he'd basically admitted to the scheme. "The defendant is a con artist who has spent his entire life manipulating and defrauding people," she told the jury. He stole from sick children and tried to frame his own stepson to avoid accountability. The evidence is clear and irrefutable. Rick's attorney did his best to create reasonable doubt, but there wasn't much he could work with. My client may have made mistakes, he said, but the prosecution hasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt that every element of these charges is true, except they had. The jury deliberated for only 4 hours before coming back with a verdict. Guilty on all counts: embezzlement, wire fraud, identity theft, money laundering, every single charge. Rick's face went pale when the verdict was read. His attorney patted his shoulder, but Rick just stared straight ahead like he couldn't believe it had actually happened. Sentencing was scheduled for 6 weeks later. Angela called me the day before. "Just so you know," she said, "the judge is known for being tough on white-collar crime, especially when it involves charities and children." The sentencing hearing was packed. Reporters, victims from the charity, Denise, my mom, Amy, and the kids. The judge reviewed Rick's entire criminal history, the gambling debts, the scams, the pattern of fraud going back decades. "Mr. Donovan," the judge said, looking at Rick over her glasses, "I've reviewed all the evidence in this case, including your testimony at trial. What strikes me most is your complete lack of remorse. You've spent your entire life manipulating people, stealing from them, and blaming others for your actions. Even on the witness stand, you couldn't take responsibility for what you'd done." Rick started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. "I'm not finished. You stole from a children's cancer charity. You framed your stepson for your crimes. You've shown no indication that you're willing or able to change your behavior. You pose a continued threat to society." She sentenced him to 15 years in federal prison with no possibility of parole for the first 7 years. He also had to pay full restitution to the charity and to me for damages to my business and reputation. "Your pattern of manipulation ends today," the judge said. "Perhaps 15 years will give you time to reflect on the harm you've caused." Rick was immediately taken into custody. As the bailiffs led him out of the courtroom, he made eye contact with me one final time. The hatred in his eyes was pure and visceral, but he didn't say anything. He just stared at me as they put him in handcuffs and walked him toward the door that would take him to prison. I watched him go, and for the first time in 25 years, I felt the weight I'd been carrying finally lift. It wasn't satisfaction exactly, more like relief. Rick couldn't hurt me anymore. He couldn't hurt anyone anymore. Justice had actually been served. As the courtroom emptied, Amy came up and took my hand. "It's over," she said. "Yeah," I replied, squeezing her fingers. "It's finally over."